No.
Okay, I see it. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1:07 p.m. and I call to order this meeting of the Performance Monitoring Audit Committee. Before we get started, I would like to have a quick moment of silence for two of our board members and our employee who lost family members. That's Chairman Cody and our employee Beverly Dumas. Please. Thank you. As we call the order, we have committee presentations and an update for our drug and alcohol program from Mr. Hall.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you? I just want to give you a quick update on where we're moving and what actually causes us to move in this direction. Currently, CAT's drug and alcohol program is a little disjointed and facilitated across several enterprises. Organizing a more comprehensive program under one umbrella will create a greater service efficiency and operational cohesion. The reorganization would also create greater integrity of the program, enhance confidentiality, stronger continuity of processes, better organizational cohesion, more efficient records management and filing, and more importantly, a stronger chain of custody. Currently, we do have an alcohol and drug policy, but the disconnect is with the process and the protocols that we have in place. What I'm attempting to do is create a program that'll streamline the processes and we have less people in the process. Attributes will also bolster CAT's compliance with all regulatory agencies regarding the management and confidentiality of drug and alcohol processes and the records management part of it. I'm also attempting to, I just got notification prior to this Zoom meeting that I have gotten accepted to a free virtual drug and alcohol conference in May. I'm also looking at attending a drug and alcohol program manager training. I'm waiting for the facilitator to provide additional information. And what we're doing now is just trying to make sure that we are always compliant with all of the regulatory agencies and making sure that we have processes in place that will prevent us from being questioned about how we are managing that particular program. And this is just information for the board moving forward. So when you do see potential action items, you'll know what it will be in reference to. Are there any questions?
Mr. Hall, I have one.
Yes.
Do we currently not have nothing in place, or what we have in place is outdated?
Well, we do have something in place, but I'm trying to make it more efficient. Right now we have, for example, if we have a random drug screening, we'll get notification, it goes to operations. Operations will assign it to the supervisor. Supervisor will have to notify a street supervisor as well as notifying the individual that is up for the actual random. And the randoms are applicable to anyone who has the ability to move a bus. And that includes dispatchers because they kind of facilitate the moving of buses, individuals in a maintenance shop. So we're just making sure that we're touching all of the processes and the departments within CAT to make sure that we are compliant. And we need to try to keep that as streamlined as possible to have less people involved, and that keeps the confidentiality and the integrity of the random testing more specifically in place.
But we've not had any incident where we were not in compliance.
Correct. And I'm just trying to get ahead of that to make sure that we don't have any incidents or any incidents that can be called into question.
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
is this anything that we have to bring to the to our union reps?
No, a lot of this is already outlined in the MOA, so they're aware of it. If we make any modifications, we'll also ensure that they're a part of that process. But we're just kind of streamlining it now. They already know what the stipulations are. For example, if you or an individual fails to submit to a test, they know what the consequences for that are. So all those things will stay the same as outlined in the policy. We're just trying to manage it under one umbrella right now.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Any other questions for Mr. Hall? Okay, thank you. Now we have item number 3 as a proposed agenda item for March 23rd is our action items. We have hazardous pay modification.
If you would, Mr. Chairman, I will make that presentation for hazard pay modification. If you will
Thank you.
recall that in January of this year, the board approved hazard pay of $600 for those operators that were actively working during the pandemic. And at the time, though, we were told to wait until the receipt of these CRISA funds until we had actually received them to make payment. This is being modified to request the board to allow staff to go ahead and make those payments through the operating fund and be reimbursed when the CRISA funds are received. I might add that I've already spoken with the finance department and that there is no hardship created if we were to do this. I think it's already been approved in the amount of not to exceed $114,000.
I saw an email come out a day ago. I think you and I both were added to that email about that same question. Hazard pay qualifications and modifications. So we looking forward to moving forward with this.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
And I was going to ask though, the funds that we're going to be reimbursed from, do we know when those funds are going to come? We just don't know yet.
Well, we anticipate them to coming in maybe around June, and Brent is going to speak to that a little bit later during this discussion or during this meeting. But June, she has some ideas about how we can receive funding earlier than June. So she'll discuss that later on in her presentation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we have extension of the COVID-19 emergency measures, the operations.
Yes, good afternoon. I am actually asking that that you consider continuing this standing item to extend the emergency measures. Did a little bit of history, kind of look back at this because several questions have come up in the past. So it looks like this first went to a special board meeting on March 24th, 2020. When it went when it went during that time, it went under as a COVID emergency measure for fare service, but there was a second one, which was the COVID emergency measures CEO authority. It looked like both of those were combined at the time. Since then, I think you only had one. I think you had your CEO in place, but there may not have been a CEO. Maybe it was a dual role. So that's where possibly some of the confusion may have come in throughout the time frame. But I'm specifically asking for operations. I went through and made a list of some things that we've done under this particular measure. And that is we've modified our service levels. We reduced bus occupancy by 50% to comply with social distancing. We've also suspended fare from April through December. We've updated our transit fueling and hostler procedure. We've also created a bus cleaning and sanitizing checklist during the time frame. We introduced a product called Vital Oxide, which is a disinfectant, very powerful disinfectant cleaner. We've had an opportunity also to change our head signs on our buses. We now have mask dispensers on the buses for our clientele. Also, in addition to that, we clean daily, but now we've added a quarterly cleaning process on top of what we're doing daily. And all that is part of the COVID measure that I'm asking for us to continue, at least until we can find our way through this COVID era. So those things that I'm asking for gives us the ability to make adjustments service-wise, keep the community safe, keep the operator safe, and therefore keeping us in service. And I'm open to any questions on that particular measure.
Mr. Cooksey.
Yes.
We have St. Patrick's Day coming up, the unofficial St. Patrick's Day. So are we looking at any contingency plan just in case we have a influx of people coming into Savannah that will be using our bus system to get around? Right.
Well, I have a meeting with our transit ops team on Thursday to discuss that very matter, what that looks like, but things we may need to do. So we'll have an internal plan or a way to look at that and, you know, make decisions based on the recommendations of the staff.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else on the extension of COVID-19 emergency measures? Thank you, Mr. Cooksey.
Yes, sir.
Next item is disposal of vehicle assets.
Yeah, so that time has come for us to dispose of these assets. We have 15 vehicles. 10 of those are paratransit vehicles. And then we have another 5 that are support vehicles. They've reached their useful life, which is 4 years, 100,000 miles. And just to kind of give you an idea of the different rules that govern us on how to dispose of these vehicles, FTA rules say once your asset is out of life, you can dispose of it of how you see fit. So for example, if a nonprofit contacted us, we can offer our units to nonprofits. However, they must be licensed. The auction rule is we can only use state licensed auctions. And third, if we deem that it's just scrap, we can scrap the vehicles and for metal, for whatever the going rate is to scrap those vehicles. So that's really how it works for us as far as the FTA disposal plan. Again, we do have 15 vehicles, and like I say, I don't anticipate a big windfall financially for these. A lot, some of them we use parts for other pieces and things of that nature. I mean, they're pretty well used at this point. But I would like, for this to be considered to move forward, to go ahead and get these assets cleared off our lot as we prepare for new vehicles coming in.
What's the life cycle of a vehicle before it goes into vehicle asset?
Well, for these particular vehicles, the paratransit size vehicles, you're looking at 4 years, 100,000 miles. Our buses are larger vehicles. You're looking at 12 years, 500,000, 500,000 miles. So these particular vehicles have met that threshold.
So when you say take them off, I know they come off your asset list, but where do they go?
Well, you know what? That remains to be seen, because we can scrap them. We may be able to auction some of those vehicles, as well as we may have a nonprofit that if there's one that's running, they can request that particular vehicle. So at this time, we wouldn't know where they would go. I mean, we do have, I understand in the past, CAT has someone who would come in, take a look at our vehicles as far as seeing what could go to auction and what could not. I guess based on that, then the other vehicles would be available for the other areas. So that's how the process generally works.
Do we already have replacements in place?
Well, we do. Yes, sir. We have 33 paratransit vehicles coming. They'll start rolling in this summer. And of those 33, 10 of those are replacements for these that are being retired. So we'll have a net gain of 23. So we'll be in very good shape as far as our paratransit vehicles starting this summer.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Cooksey for disposal of vehicle assets? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Item number D is Veterans Half Fare Pilot Program.
Good afternoon. As you know, the Veterans Half Fare Pilot Program began in November. It was started implementing on November 11th of 2019. And so we wanted to analyze what the ridership would be for this half fare program for all of our veterans. We started to analyze and got 4 months of data before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. So obviously once we were no longer accepting fares for anyone, there was no way for us to tell if veterans were riding our routes or not. Now that we've reinstated the fares in December, we picked back up that analysis process. And as you know, the FTA requires that if we do any fare change, we do have to do a Title VI analysis. So we are in the process, my team is in the process of completing our Title VI analysis. I anticipate the recommendation to be glowing. We know that there is no adverse impact on minorities or low income. However, we want to make sure that we've fulfilled all of our requirements for FTA. So we're finishing that now. We'll have it done for the March 23rd board meeting. And we would like to recommend that the pilot turns into a permanent addition to our half fare program.
How do we identify veterans who want to use our bus service?
So there are a couple ways that veterans can identify. They can show us their military ID. They can show us their veterans ID. And I feel like there was one more, and I don't have it up in front of me.
It's the copy of the GD-214 that they filed with the county.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was making sure because I was in the ROTC. I want to see if I can get on the bus.
If you have all of those, any of those forms, we're happy to make it work for you.
All right.
Is that part of the mobile app as well?
Yes. The mobile app does include that half fare option.
Thank you.
And I believe the way that the mobile app is set up is that once you establish you are qualified, then in your individual app, you automatically get that half fare price.
Well, the other thing about, I think I should have asked Mr. Cooksey that, are you, Alderman Leggett, what about the downtown shuttle? What's happening?
I've asked that question, and we're supposed to get a answer back from the mayor and council. But the last I heard, they've told us that they're waiting to see what the numbers look like from the health department before we have that downtown shuttle out and running. But it looked good right now. I'm not sure when the actual rollout date is.
Our staff and the city staff have also been working together to make sure that we are ready to roll it out when they are ready to roll it out. We've actually also been talking about an extension to the downtown loop into the Eastern Wharf, which is exciting, and looking at an extension for next year in 2022 of the Forsyth loop down into Starling District. So we're having these conversations, and I'm optimistic that we are not only going to see that dot shuttle come back soon, but also expand in the next few months and next year. So exciting things are happening there.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions for Bree for item number D? Okay, Bree, I think you have E also, right?
I do. So the next item on the agenda is the coronavirus. I'm reading it because I'm not great at remembering all these acronyms. The Coronavirus Relief and Recovery Supplemental Appropriations Act. So we're calling it CRISA. It is basically CARES Act Part 2. And you know that we got $5.8 million apportioned to us in this funding. The way that our grants are set up currently is that our 5307 funds are covering operating expenses through June of 2021, which would, and they're at a 50% match, which would mean we could start our CRISA funds as early as July 2021. However, that means we wouldn't be able to draw down those funds until August. So we wouldn't start seeing any of that immediately. And so I looked at what our options would be to get that funding faster. If we amend our current application, which has been approved in the system and executed, and amend our 5307 funds to cut off on February 28th of this year, we would have about $770,000 left in that application that we could then use for emergency relief funding. If you remember a couple months ago, we talked about finding about 500,000 we were looking at in expenses that we have paid directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we can get reimbursed at 100% of that funding, but we can't just get it automatically. We have to obviously apply for it, and it needs to be in a package with other things. So if we were to incorporate that into our amendment of the current application, it's actually closer to $700,000, and we could draw that down as soon as the grant is executed. That would also mean that our operating funds would start being collected at 100% through the CRISA Act starting in March. So that would be a quicker drawdown of the operating expenses. It ends up that it would be the way that we've set it up now. We've got about $967,000 of a local match. With the amendment proposed, we're looking at about a $207,000 local match. So we're saving quite a bit in local match funding because we're able to execute the CRISA funds at 100% rather than the 50% that they're at currently. So that is all to say, it's a complicated process. However, I think we have a great plan. Not only did I run this past our finance department, but also Ms. Val. Finance department concurs with this recommendation to allow us to amend the current application and start our CRISA funds for operating expenses in the month of March.
So, Ms. Dr. Robertson, to your question, we could start receiving those funds in March.
Okay, yeah, I was a little bit confused.
Yes.
But also, something was said that said something about July, which I was thinking then about 2022 budget, 2021 budget. So I'm kind of confused about the money. So, you know, when are we going to get it? You know, when are we going to be able to use it?
Basically, the answer is it depends. It depends on the board's decision at the board meeting as to how you want us to fashion the grants. If we were to do it as it is now, because we have 5307 extended through FY21 through June, we wouldn't be able to set up the grant to start collecting operating funds until July, which would actually be a drawdown of August. But if we amend the application that we have now, we can not only draw down our operating expenses at 100% with the CRISA funds earlier, but we can also use that emergency relief funding, which is over $700,000 that we can draw down immediately because we've already spent that money. So the answer, I hate to say, the answer is it depends. But if you go with our recommendation, as soon as the grant is executed, we can start drawing down. And it's about 15 months of operating expenses is what the CRISA funds comes out to be at 100%.
So as the grant stands now, it would be August at the earliest that we could receive funding. But if we were modified based on Brent's recommendation, if the board were to modify the grant, allow her to modify the grant, then we could draw down this month, possibly.
And there's a need to do that, financial need of the organization to do that.
Well, we're in pretty good standing right now. I don't want the board to be misled when I say pretty good standing, because if you have $3 million in reserve, it doesn't note directly the cash flow of the organization. And we also have to consider that there is a balance of that we're obligated to maintain in the bank, which varies $3 million, $4 million as part of our agreement with the county's line of credit. We're supposed to maintain a certain balance in the bank, which we haven't been able to do. So because we have that reserve of $4 million, it looks good, but actually we don't really have that because we have an obligation to maintain at least 3 to 4 million for that line of credit. That's supposed to be in there at all times. So we can't look to spend that. But if the modification is approved, it will allow us to draw down those funds and allow more of that funding for operating versus capital.
And I guess what my question is, Ms. Ragland, as far as operations is concerned and the need to, I'm not opposed to it at all. I'm just trying to be clear on, for operational purposes, are we headed toward being in trouble?
Not in trouble, no ma'am. But you know, the line of credit initially, if you recall, was opened specifically to take us through those hard times,
right,
and especially through payroll.
Right.
Well, this would allow us to give us a little cushion, if you will, and we won't have to say rely on that cushion that we have with the $4 million. We can't use that anyway. We don't want to use that. We want to build that reserve. We want to keep building that reserve. So these monies would allow us to take our hands off that, if you will. So yes, it would benefit the organization, but we're not in trouble.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for Ms. Ragland or for Bree? Okay, so I see we don't have any old business. Does that answer everything for you, Dr. Robinson? I know you want to add something.
Well, I mean, if this, Ms. Ragland, this is not the place or the time for me to ask this question, but I was interested in finding out where were we on the, I think you corrected me, it wasn't a recommendation, but it was an opinion letter on where we stood with the attorneys.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And I just want to know, are we doing anything with that opinion or?
No, ma'am, it was just for information.
Okay, so based on that, am I to assume that we're continuing with our current attorney and we're gonna resubmit the RFP, or we're not gonna do anything?
It was my understanding that it will be resubmitted.
We know when?
No, ma'am. I know the chairman had said that, you know, he thought it would be in the best interest of the authority to resubmit the RFP, but we have not discussed when it will be resubmitted.
So you're saying that's left up to the board, or I thought that was within your authority?
We are going to resubmit it. The staff will resubmit it. It will probably be on the agenda for our next month.
Okay, with no old business, nothing new. Our next meetings are March 16th, that's the governance meeting, and March 23rd, 2021 is our regular board meeting. We don't have anything else for the good of the order. I just, on behalf of myself, Commissioner Adams, and Dr. Robinson, I want to let each and every one of you in your respective places to let you know that we appreciate all that you do, because without you guys, we can't really get anything done. And we as an organization move as one unit. And I appreciate you again. I see you guys at the next meeting.
I got a question.
Mr.
I have a
Ragland. Yes.
Ms. Ragland, what I wanted to know is that when we have these committee meetings.
Yes, ma'am.
And before we were doing it collectively and we started to go back to doing it this way and we're getting the same information, is this how is this more effective for staff?
It really isn't for staff. It's just to benefit the board members, since you all can't be in the same meeting at the same time. So it's more for the benefit of the board. And if this is something that you would like to, if you'd like to examine some other way of holding these meetings, I'd be glad to discuss that with you.
Okay.
I think it's almost time.
Yeah.
No, I was saying, I think it's almost time. I mean, the way that the numbers are starting to look and other municipalities are starting to open back up, we might need to look at just other ways of meeting, or just come up with a different model.
Yes.
Just as a test.
Yes. I'd be glad to look into that.
Okay, and I'll give some thought as well, because I was really thinking about staff more than board members.
Right.
You know, because I mean, the hours you guys spend with these 3 different meetings seems to me, if we're getting the same information, you know, I think if the committees met outside of the regular, you know, just have a meeting of the committee members.
Yes,
and have a
ma'am.
discussion. And if we want to present something at the meeting at that point, we could. But if we're all getting the same information and you delivered it 3 times, you know, I think we can better use your time more wisely if we had a better setup.
Yes, ma'am. I understand.
That's it for me.
Nothing.
That's it for me for real this time.
Well, if there's nothing else for the greater good of the order, I call this meeting adjourned. I see you guys later.